Now we are going to focus on the process of the creditors reconciliation. So we are Mango Clothing Stores for this illustration, and we have an account with a creditor Mabasa Manufacturers. So this is our creditors ledger account of Mabasa Manufacturers. And then we receive from Mabasa Manufacturers a statement that was dated 27 January. So we can imagine if we are doing our creditors reconciliation at the end of the month and the statement of Mabasa Manufacturers is only up to the 27th, that there will be some timing differences. So now the first step is to compare our debits with the statement's credits, because as earlier indicated, debtors and creditors are opposites, they are mirror images. So if Mabasa is our creditor, from their perspective we are their debtors. So now we compare our debit column against their credit column, and anything that corresponds, like the 520 on the debit side corresponds on the credit side, we tick on both sides when they are matching. And what's important here also is to realize that when we have debit notes on our side, we have to look for their corresponding credit notes. When we have checks on our side, we have to look for their corresponding receipts. Now, any amount that we have in the debit column that do not appear on their credit side, we will have to circle. So we can see, for example, this 120 appears on our debit side but not on the statement's credit side. We do the same for the credit columns. Now we will have to compare with the statement's debit columns, or their debit columns from their perspective. So again, we have on our credit side a 3640, but on their debit side we don't have a 3640, we in fact have a 3460. So it doesn't match, so we circle on our side. Similarly, we can see the 4790 on our credit side do not appear on the debit side or on the statement debit side. So again, we circle on our side. If we had something on our credit side that matched something on their debit side, we will tick both. Now, we have to do the same on their side. Anything that appears on their debit side, or anything basically that does not appear on our credit side but appear on the statement's debit side, we will circle on the statement. And then the same with the credit columns of the statement. So once we have gone through this whole process, we will have to focus on the circles, both on our side, in our books, and on the statement, which is a reflection of their books. Now, if the circle is on our side, it means there's an entry that we made that they did not make from their perspective. Now, if our entry is valid, we will therefore have to include it on our equivalent of their creditor statement, which we call the creditors reconciliation statements, which structurally only have a debit and a credit and then explanations of what's happening on the side. So the creditors reconciliation statement we can see as basically extension of the statement that we receive from them. Therefore, we will have to start with our creditor statement's balance at the end, which is 5,060 as a debit. So we can see in the creditors recon, we started with a debit balance as per creditor statement on 27 January of 5060. Note the date. It is helpful to include the date to see from what date the timing differences probably will occur. So now we will just add anything on this creditors reconciliation statement which we have on our side but does not appear on their creditors statement. So similarly, anything that appears on the creditor statement that is circle mean it's an entry they made that we did not make. So after investigation, if we find any of these valid on their side, we will have to make those entries on our side in the creditors ledger. So now that we know that process, let's just go into the details. Usually details are provided of what resulted of the comparison and investigation for the circled amounts. So let's just systematically work through those. So here we have additional information. Invoice number 186 appears correctly in the creditors ledger. So it's correct on our side. Mabasa will correct the error. So on our side, this appears correctly as 3460. On the other side, we will have to fix the error. So we will have to find the difference between 3460 and the 3640. The difference between 3640 and 3460 is 180 Rand. So the entry we made on our side is correct. So we have 180 more than they have. So they will have to make a further entry of 180 on their side, which would be the debit side. So therefore, for now, we make on our equivalent of the creditor statement on the debit side the entry of 180 for invoice number 186 that was incorrectly recorded on the statement. Then further in the additional information, it indicates that Mabasa forgot to deduct the discount allowed by them on the 26th. They will reflect this amount on the next month's statement. So we recorded the discount correctly as 120 rather. They omitted it. They will add it to the next statement, but we for now have to add it on our equivalent of their statement, the creditors recon on the credit side as 120. So we have discount not recorded on the statement as 120 Rand. So then it is also indicated it was discovered that invoice number 188 on 18 January was actually issued to manga suppliers. Mabasa manufacturers were notified and will correct the error. So we are mango suppliers. So they put a different supplier's invoice on our statement. So therefore they made an error which they will fix. We for now will have to fix it on our equivalent of their statement, the creditors recon. So let's just go and see 188 they put on the debit side. So therefore we will have to put it on the credit side of the creditors recon. There we go, there's the 2120. Then further, we also have some of these timing differences. For example, we can see on the 30th, which is after the statement date of the 27th, we have a check, number 158, which does not appear yet on their statement, as their statement is only up to the 27th. So for now, we have to add it on our equivalent of their statement, the creditors recon, but on the opposite side, because from their perspective it is the opposite than from our perspective. So it's a 1730 on the credit side. So payment not on statement, 1730 on the credit side. Furthermore, we have on the 28th, which is again after the date of their statement, a credit of 4790. So we will have to go and add it on their equivalent of the statement, namely the creditors recon statement, on the opposite side, namely the debit side, 4790. So invoice number 203, not on the statement, 4790. And then finally, we look at our closing balance, which remember will be a credit balance because we owe a supplier if it's a positive balance, which is usually the case because liabilities have credit balances. So finally, we have credit balance as per our ledger account. And now, if we add up all the debits and all the credits, it should balance. Now, there is an alternative format of the creditors reconciliation statement. Instead of having two columns, we only have one column. We start off with the balance according to the creditor statement, which will be a positive balance, and then we add anything that would increase the balance and subtract anything that will decrease the balance on their side. And then the final balance will be the balance as per our creditors ledger account.